This is the Loaded Radio Podcast.
Okay, it's Scott Penfold, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Loaded Radio Podcast. Yes, it's the new weekly podcast, a new one every week for you, talking to the biggest names in hard rock and metal on a weekly basis right here on the Loaded Radio Podcast. This week, I'm talking to the one and only Acey Slade. Now, that's a familiar name to you. I mean, understandably, the guy's been in so many bands, most predominantly known for his work in the band Dope. Acey is also the current touring guitarist for the Misfits. Not that there's much touring going on right now. Played with Joan Jett and the Blackhearts for about 5 years. He was in a little outfit called Murderdolls. You may remember them with Wednesday 13 and Joey Jordison. And also his solo act, Acey Slade and the Dark Party. I've been trying for a while to get Acey on the podcast, so it's really, really good to finally have him here today. Acey, how you doing, man?
Yo!
Let's get into like with the last year, specifically 2020, and even currently. What have you, Acey Slade, been up to in the time? What have you been doing with the pandemic?
Well, my wife and I started a coffee company called Catfight Coffee, and it was funny. We went to Asia and we had the idea to start this new company, and right when the pandemic was officially announced or whatever, and everything was closed for a week, it was like, all my gigs for the year were clearly tabled indefinitely. Yeah. And it was a little scary. And there was a lot of people that were very sick and in really serious situations. And after, for 1 week, we're like, okay, let's start this company, but now the timing may seem insensitive. And then after a week, it was like, well, that's ridiculous. It's a great time to start a coffee company, because coffee is something that gives people routine. It gives them a sense of, familiarity, gives them a sense of comfort. And so we felt like we could provide all those things in a time where you can't go out to a store necessarily. Right. So we felt that we could provide something at a time that really sucked. So we changed our mind and we decided to launch.
What's going on with Acey Slade, the Dark Party? Are you still doing stuff at all?
No, it's funny you should bring that up, because I've been, everybody kind of dealt with the whole pandemic thing in different ways. And I wish I could say that I was one of these people that wrote like a double album or a triple album or something like that. I honestly kind of went the opposite way, man. I was so fucking bummed out that I barely picked up my instrument at all, which was really a bummer. But now I'm kind of coming out of that. And I guess part of it too is that we were launching the coffee company, and you kind of have to feed the hottest fires, so to speak. So yeah, but I'm starting to come out of it now. And there's a couple songs I plan on going into the studio to record very shortly, and I don't know what banner I'm going to fly them under, but it's the monster's starting to wake up.
That's cool. And that's good to hear too, man. Are you still talking to the guys in Dope at all? Are you still going to be doing any work with them? Do you see in the future?
Well, everything Dope wise is tabled for the year. So I still talk to him though. It was Etzel's birthday yesterday. And with Catfight Coffee, we do a thing called Monday Mayhem, which is our Spotify playlist. And Virus just did one. So yeah, I mean, those guys are my brothers. We talk all the time. Even if we aren't playing together, we still talk. You know what I mean? Because sometimes there's a tour I can't do or whatever, but we're still bros. So.
And that's cool. I mean, even just looking back at your history with with the Dope Brothers, and even going back to the early days of Dope, the relationships. I mean, sure you did leave the band for a bit there too, and then coming back into it. How has the relationship always been with the Dope Brothers?
Well, there was a rocky patch when I left, but that was 20 years ago, and in the meantime, you get older and you become more mature, hopefully. And you realize that was then, this is now. What do you want to do? You want to play music and with people that you get along with that have a similar vision of how the music should be presented. Yeah. All right, cool. And don't be an idiot. It's you kind of break it down to that,
Do you personally think that there will be new material from Dope or anything in the next year or two?
Yeah, Etzel's working on the follow-up to Blood Money Part 1, so I think Blood Money Part 2 is going to be out I don't know if he has a release date, but I know last time I spoke to him, he was wrapping it up. So.
Oh, really? When it comes to Dope, when I was doing some of the history of the band itself. And now, is it true that in the early days, the band actually sold drugs to try and, get by and even just to get your instruments?
Yes.
Really?
That was before I joined the band. When I joined the band, we already had a record deal, so we didn't need to sell drugs anymore. But yeah, that's absolutely true. And in fact, someone asked me the other day why Dope covered "Fuck the Police," and a big reason for that was the inspiration that the band had early on was watching a lot of the West Coast rappers that paid for their demos by selling drugs. And so yeah, they it was the exact same mentality.
And there's always going to be a market for it. So it turned out great for Dope, of course.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's funny because, I don't drink or use drugs. And it's funny because I'm still, I wouldn't say an advocate, but I support legalizing drugs because it's like, it's a war you're going to lose. So what's the point? I mean, obviously hard drugs are the exception.
Of course,
but then if you want to go that way, it's like, well, if you want hard drugs, just go see your doctor and he'll write you a prescription for one, really, because half of the painkillers that they're prescribing are really just synthetic versions of the hard street drugs that are out there anyway. So
getting back to Dope, even let's go even that point of post Dope for a while when you were with the Murderdolls. I love the Dolls, man. I mean, working with Joey, what was the experience like working with Wednesday and Joey?
Well, Joey, is one of the best drummers on the planet.
Yes.
So that was awesome. And Wednesday is just such a witty, charismatic front man that, it's funny when you play in a band, a lot of times you kind of look at the guys that need to pick up the slack. And it's great when the singer and guitar player / drummer, where a lot of the band doesn't need the slack picked up, where you can look over and be like, nope, they got it down,
Yeah.
And chances are when that happens, it means that you're probably the guy that needs to pick up the slack. So
Gotcha. Yeah. No, well, actually, what prompted the move to Murderdolls at that time, back in 2002?
I mean, to be honest with you, Joey had approached me about doing the Murderdolls back when the band was called the Rejects. Yeah. And I was busy with Dope. Joey was clearly busy with Slipknot. And it just didn't make sense to me that I was in a band that was the primary band, which was Dope. And we were writing our second record. I had writing credit on that second record. I wrote a bunch of songs on it. Why would I do anything to jeopardize that when for a side project of a dude who's in the biggest band in the world? Do you know what I mean? Like, clearly Slipknot was always going to be the priority. So when he had been asking me about it, it was kind of like, yeah, I just don't feel like the timing is right. Well, we go and do the second Dope record and we get done and 9/11 happens. The music industry goes in the shitter. One of our A&R guys left the label. So Dope, that second record was basically stalled. And so while that record was stalling, Joey released the Murderdolls record and was like, dude, like, I'm putting the record out and going on tour. Do you want to do it now? And it's like, all right, cool. So it was just a matter of timing and opportunity, really.
Now, was there some hostility in Dope that you made that move?
Yeah, at first. But like I said, as we get older,
Understood.
The last Dope tour we did, Wednesday was on and stuff like that. So yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Now, I remember that there was even some talk for a while there about Murderdolls possibly doing more work in the future. Have you heard anything about that?
No, I mean, next year is the 20th anniversary of the debut album.
That's right. So yeah,
it would make sense, but there hasn't really been any talk of that. It's still a little soon. I mean,
Yeah, of course, I understand. Now, how about working with Joan Jett and the Blackhearts? How about that experience?
Oh, that was great, man. I mean, I'll never forget, when we did the first show and I was peering out from behind the curtain to see if like anybody showed up. Yeah. And, well, you play with Joan Jett. Like, of course people showed up. You know what I mean? Like, and I remember having this feeling like I never got to look from behind the curtain again to see if people show up again. Like, I don't got to worry about it. And even if, hey man, everybody has their markets and their nights where the show wasn't put together the way it should. Even the nights that were bad, they were never bad. And it's like, you're not going to get burned, you're not going to get ripped off. And, it's just a hiccup in the road, not the end of the road. Like when you're in a band like Dope or even like the Murderdolls, it's like you have one bad note and it really and it shakes your faith a little bit. And, you're basically playing night to night to night to make that nut at the end of the tour. But when you're playing with someone like Joan, it doesn't really affect things very much as the whole, and that the branding is established. It's like, all right, somebody just didn't promote this show tonight, and they that's their loss, not ours, so.
Who gave you that initial phone call telling you about that gig, and how did you get that gig?
I'm a big believer that you create opportunities. I don't like it when people say that I'm lucky, because that implies that, like, lucky is walking down the street and finding the $20 bill. That I have made a lot of sacrifices, and certainly, fate has been kind to me, but I also created a lot of these opportunities. But I do got to say the Joan thing was absolute luck. Just to contradict everything I just said. It's I had a friend whose drummer was the husband, and they had a guy. They didn't really like him. She met me and she knew I played, and I don't know. I didn't even think about it. And I just got a phone call from her one day. She said, hey, what are you doing? I was like, well, nothing. She said, all right, we'll go home, learn 5 Joan Jett songs. Your audition's on Wednesday. If you nail it, you're leaving for Australia in 2 weeks. And I didn't have anything to do with that. You know what I mean? Like, this wasn't something that I worked. I mean, obviously you work your whole career towards gigs like that, but it wasn't like I planted any seeds or anything like that. It fell out of the sky into my lap, and then of course from there, it's like opportunities are what you make them. So of course I grabbed onto the reins and rode that ride for 6 years, so.
Yeah, certainly. Now, have you wrapped up working with Joan at this point?
Yeah, I'm not working with her any longer. She's had another bass player for the past 5 years or something. So
yeah. And now what about the Vampire Love Dolls? Did you see anything with them in the future at all?
No, nothing like that.
No, they wouldn't want to revisit something like that.
The only thing I ever think about with that is, I'm very fortunate that I have such a really, really cool group of people that support me, that some people call them fans. I don't really like that word too much, but, and they're always like, oh, how come that stuff's not available? And honestly, the recording quality is really, really, really bad. And so I do think, like, maybe I should re-record some of that stuff. Like maybe make an album that has re-recordings of everything that I've ever done, of every band that I've ever done, so that there's like some continuity and context to it. Because, the way that we recorded the Vampire Love Dolls stuff was totally different than the way I recorded my last solo album, Valentine's for Sick Minds. I mean, when I did the Vampire Love Dolls thing, that was a demo. That was just some kids trying to make music. But the last record that I did, I had Kato Kandwala mix it, who's a Grammy award-winning mixing engineer. The guy who engineered the whole album is Tom Camuso. He's won Grammys. So there's a drastic difference in the quality of those things, and it would be nice to have them all in one place.
Now, are you personally concerned about the immediate future of the music industry?
No, not really. No, I mean, because it is what it is, and I'm going to keep playing no matter what. So, it's kind of like worrying about the weather,
Yeah, I understand that. Now, do you think that when we are allowed to return to shows, that you're going to be getting back out there on the road as much as possible? Like, what are your plans for the immediate future once some sense of normalcy does return?
Well, that's an interesting point, because everybody is thinking of the return to shows in different ways. So, for example, like I said, and of course, all this is subject to change, but, Dope elected to table all the shows for the rest of the year, even if shows resume, mainly because, the type of music that we all love and play, whether it's punk, metal, or whatever, everybody's going to be ready to go on tour at the exact same time. So for the fans' point of view, instead of going to see one metal show a week, you're now going to be looking at 3. And so there's no way that people can possibly go to all the shows that are going to be out there, one would think. And that can affect your numbers. That can affect your draw,
Sure can. Yeah.
And so rather than, jockey to be out there really quickly, and then, all of a sudden, like a band like Dope, where our numbers had gotten really high again, we were bringing in really good numbers again. All of a sudden we tour post-pandemic, the numbers come down, not because we have less fans, but because there's more bands touring. Then all of a sudden you go to tour again the next year and the promoters say, oh, well, you brought half as many people as you did the year before. And so we want to pay half as much, So that's the logic that the Dope has. But some of the other bands that I'm playing with are taking another avenue, which is like, let's be the first, let's get out there and let's, make sure that we're prepared. So to be honest with you, half the people I'm talking to are like, we're not going to do shit. The other half are like, be ready. And it wouldn't surprise me if they were both right.
Yeah.
Both wrong, so.
Now, what about the actual recording process? Do you think that 2022 is going to see a shit ton of releases come out?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably so, eh?
Yeah.
How can myself or anybody get some Catfight coffee?
Just off of our website, catfightcoffee.com.
Yeah. And like different brews and stuff like that.
Yeah. We have a few, actually. We have a Tura Satana coffee, which does really well. We kind of basically have 2 medium dark roasts that are our flagship coffee, the Tura Satana and the Iron Claw. Yeah. And then the other one the other 2 that are actually very popular. It's funny because we were just going over the statistics, but our Black Magic coffee is a black walnut coffee that was our number 1, but it has been knocked out. And I'm going to use my best radio voice here. It's been knocked out of the number 1 slot this week by our Highlander Grog coffee, which Highlander Grog is like a butterscotch rum vanilla type taste. And it's really, really, really good.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, that's the new number 1. And there's no actual alcohol in it. So.
No, good stuff though. Again, what's the website address for people who can check it out?
Catfightcoffee.com.
Catfightcoffee.com. There you go. Well, now, you know what, Acey, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to me today, man. It's been absolutely great.
Yeah, and thank you for your patience, man. I know we're trying to set this up, and then I was late today, so my apologies.
Hey, no problem at all. And you know what? I can't wait to see you when you do come around with it, whether it be Misfits or anybody. It'd be good to see you again on stage.
Amen to that.
All right, take care, pal.
All right, man. Have a great day.
And there you have it. There he is, the man himself, Acey Slade. I got to get my hands on some of that coffee, man. Sounds good. Sounds real good. Thanks as well to you for hanging out and checking out the latest edition of the Loaded Radio podcast. Hey, don't forget, check out loadedradio.com on a daily basis for all your hard rock and metal news. It's updated constantly as well. We get the 24-hour stream right there for you. Our number 1 hard rock and metal station on the web today. It's massive and it's right there, just a click away. Tune in again next week for an all-new edition, an all-new interview right here on the Loaded Radio podcast. You can listen to us on Spotify, Deezer, through the website, loadedradio.com, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. We're right there for you. And we'll talk to you again next week right here on the Loaded Radio podcast. Take care.
Loaded Radio.